to this episode of the Literacy Network of South Berkshire Presents. My name is Lee Doherty, and I am the Executive Director of LitNet. In today's episode, I welcome three of my colleagues from a very important group. It's a group that meets twice monthly and is comprised of local organizations and institutions who work to serve the immigrant community. Entitled B.A.S.I.C, it stands for Berkshire Advocacy and Services to the Immigrant Community. It was founded about 5 years ago and is a really robust group of caring professionals who share practices and services and think about how to best serve the immigrants in our community here locally. In today's episode, I welcome Ilana Steinhauer, Executive Director of VIM, Doug Mishkin, a lawyer who works with immigrants or low-income folks around housing issues, and Becky Meyer, who works for the Adult Language Program at B.C. In today's episode, we'll talk about how B.A.S.I.C came to be, some of the successes that B.A.S.I.C has encountered, hopes for B.A.S.I.C, and you'll learn just about how we partner together, because together we are stronger. B.A.S.I.C has really helped me in my role understand all the services that are available to our learners. So it's been a wonderful partnership and strength building organization. I hope you enjoy the video today, and see you next month. Welcome. It's my pleasure to introduce some of my B.A.S.I.C colleagues today. They're not B.A.S.I.C people. They're just members of the B.A.S.I.C group. And B.A.S.I.C stands for Berkshire Advocacy and Services to the Immigrant Community. So that's what we all share in common on the B.A.S.I.C group. And there are about 25 people on a big day that representatives of different organizations that are present. So we are just a small crossbreed today. But I'm going to have my colleagues introduce themselves, say who they are and where they work and who they serve. So we'll start with you, Becky.
My name is Becky Meyer. I work with BCC's Adult Learning Program, where we teach English for speakers of other languages. And obviously, all of our students are immigrants. So we thought this was a great group to be part of.
Doug.
I'm Doug Mishkin. I'm a lawyer with the law firm of Heisler, Feldman, and McCormick, and we represent low-income tenants in housing court matters in Berkshire County and throughout Western Massachusetts.
And Ilana.
My name's Ilana Steinhauer. I'm the Executive Director at Volunteers in Medicine Berkshire. So we provide healthcare, comprehensive healthcare for people who are uninsured or underinsured in the Berkshire region.
Great. So I would think out of the four of you, I'm the newest kid on the block at B.A.S.I.C. So when I joined LitNet back in September. I have to say, honestly, it's one of my favorite professional endeavors each month, the two meetings. I feel like it's a very productive meeting of really engaged and caring people. And I really enjoy attending the meeting. So that's just something to say to you all who have been involved in it much longer. And I think today I'll also learn some history about B.A.S.I.C. So let's start with that. What is B.A.S.I.C and how did B.A.S.I.C come to be?
Yeah, so B.A.S.I.C came out of the last election. So, over 4 years ago, there was a drive in the Berkshires to respond to kind of the unrest that people were feeling and the attack on the immigrant community. And so people who were working with the immigrant community already started to hear about pop-ups that were happening about, people who wanted to help the immigrant community, agencies that were starting to, change their mission a little bit. And so Brooke Mead from the Berkshire Immigrant Center, myself and them, John Nelson, who was at Church on the Hill at the time, Pastor John Nelson and Rabbi Neil Hirsch came together and said, what would it look like to create a space where we could come together both as agencies who are working with the community, as well as community members, faith leaders, and have a place where we could discuss and talk with really a mission of connecting and organizing Berkshire County so that the immigrants can thrive here.
Great. Doug, when did you join the organization, and what has been your experience?
I joined shortly after I transitioned up to live in the Berkshires full time to do the kind of work that I'm doing. And what struck me immediately was the pleasure to pain ratio of the B.A.S.I.C meetings is outstanding. Namely, we spend our time doing exactly what we set out to do. We're not a 501c3. We're not listening to treasurer's reports. We're not thinking about our budgets. It's the people at the table sharing what's going on in their organizations, sharing ideas, raising questions that we can all bounce off of, and then sharing our resources with one another. So, for example, as a housing lawyer, what I want to do is spread the word that low-income tenants who have problems with their landlords should not be going to court by themselves and shouldn't be signing agreements with landlords by themselves. And the group of people around the table at B.A.S.I.C are a great audience to get that word to, because they can then turn around and say to their constituents, their clients, their patients, you're not in this alone when you have a housing problem. And so to spend an hour with people doing the social justice work of the Berkshires geared toward the immigrant community, that's just a terrific opportunity. And of course, the people are delightful.
Becky, what's been your experience and involvement?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to remember. I don't know if Anna, I think the director at the ALP, I think she began and then she couldn't make a few meetings and I started going. And then I got super involved, and we'll discuss it later, in helping to organize something called Breaking the Ice. And since then, I've become the recording secretary for the group. But I'll echo what Doug and Alana said. It's a great group to work with. It feels like some things really get done. A lot is about not duplicating services and augmenting what we do so that, 2 + 2 is 5. If we're working together better. And I think we really do that well. And I want to just a shout out to Alana, both for coming up with it, sticking with it, and she's a very good chair of our meetings and kind of keeping us focused and moving ahead.
Absolutely. A very productive meeting. What are some important things that B.A.S.I.C has achieved in its time period? So it's 4 years now, over 4 years. What are some achievements you can think of that you look back and you say, wow, we did that. We feel proud of that.
Yeah, I think I think the main thing that has happened is we have started to all communicate. And so we have become more effective as individual agencies, which to me is the goal. And we have seen offshoots come out. So there's, groups like Latinas 413, and, there are different Facebook pages. And we've created a space where people can come and identify resources that we have and also gaps that exist. So I think COVID was a really good example of why a group like this is so important. Our job as a group isn't to do direct service. We weren't going out on, during our meetings and, handing out food, but we were able to work together to understand what is unique about an immigrant's experience in the Berkshires. And how do we as a group identify that, help identify that experience and make sure that we are helping people reach the resources that they need and then advocate for the gaps. So we didn't have to do food distribution, right? Our group didn't have to get into food distribution, but we were able to understand what is the system of food distribution in the Berkshires and what's needed to make it accessible for the immigrant community. And we could advocate for having someone who spoke Spanish at the Great Barrington food pantry, or we could, we understood very early on that the school year was going to look very differently for children of immigrants, especially when parents didn't speak English as a second language. So we had a part of the group advocating with Pittsfield. We had the whole group advocating with the superintendents. We had a Southern Berkshire group that started a educational program where LitNet got to come out and tutor, and VIM got to help identify patients. And so we're able to really work together and identify to do so many things. I mean, we can't really, say, oh, we've accomplished, blah, blah, but all of these things together. And then, Becky, we'll talk a little bit about, we held an event right before COVID last year called Breaking the Ice, which was the largest gathering and stakeholder gathering to really hear the voice of the immigrant community, and to take that data and bring that back to say, here are the strengths, here's what the voice of the immigrant community is saying to us. Now, what do we do?
Do you want to tell us about Breaking the Ice, Becky? It's great.
Yeah, in just a moment, let me just speak to COVID for a moment. One will never know exactly what would have happened if B.A.S.I.C hadn't been here through COVID. But I feel like, obviously, people got sick, people lost their jobs. There wasn't a lot we could do about that. But I think that the coordination of this group allowed the immigrants in Berkshire County to have the best circumstances under the circumstances. I mean, we connected people with money to help pay rents and health insurance. We got people health who might not have been connected with health insurance. We got information about safe and unsafe practices out to the community, to groups that often aren't covered by traditional methods. And with food distribution and schools, I really feel like that experience for the immigrants in our community was much better because of the work that we were able to do. And we recently had a woman who worked in New York City with many, many, obviously more resources than the Berkshire has. And she was just blown away and felt that they couldn't do in New York City what this small group was doing for immigrants here because of the way we work together.
Absolutely.
And so I think it was mostly Neil and Alana and John, I'm going to say the wrong last name.
Nelson,
thank you. Who came together with this idea of trying to really hear from the immigrants themselves. A few of the members of our groups are immigrants themselves, but most of us are white Anglo social service agency employees. And we have the best interest of the immigrant community at heart, but we're not immigrants. And so we really wanted to hear about the real ins and outs life experiences of immigrants in our community. So we called, I don't know who came up with Breaking the Ice, but I loved it. Of course, it's
Eleanor, I think.
Did she? It's a twist on ICE being I don't even know what ICE stands for. Anyone remember? Anyway, ICE is the agency which comes and gets immigrants, and we were going to break the ice. It was also winter time, so we were going to break the ice, and we were going to break the ice by getting together as a community. So there was an incredible outreach. Every one of us in our communities reached out to the customers, patients, whatever clients, whatever we called them, to encourage them to come. And we did it during February vacation week. And we ended up doing it at Hevra, the Jewish temple in Great Barrington. And we prayed that there wouldn't be too much snow and there would be, that the weather would make it a little easier. And we decided to provide dinner, and nothing like food and dancing to get people that we needed to entice people with some fun. So we had
good old days when you could have food and dance together.
Well, the amazing thing is we made it by a few weeks. COVID hit right after this, and we were just if we had done all that work and then couldn't do it, which of course happened to many people. So we were very lucky. So we shared food. We provided the main dish and people brought stuff. And then afterwards we had a DJ and music. But the heart of and then we had a resource fair in the beginning. But the heart of it was we trained discussion leaders, facilitators, who were immigrants. And at each table group, and there were about 10 people at round tables, one person facilitated and one person took notes. And we created a list of questions to elicit what their experiences. Had they experienced discrimination? We had a wonderful group of high school children. So there was a separate group talking with the children. And then we had childcare so that parents could be there. So they were in-depth discussions. Every table had their own facilitator, but had the same questions, and recorded them and then put them together. And it just, as I walked around to those discussions, everybody was intent, listening, sharing, and the feedback was so heartwarming of people just feeling this was the first time they had all come together and felt so affirmed. And then we took that data and analyzed it. And given COVID, everything took a long, long time. And we are now in the process of trying to get that information that we received back to the community, the people who were there and the agencies who were there and the community. And the logistics of that are not as easy as we had hoped. So we have to translate it into languages, but we're hoping that will happen soon. And everybody wanted another one. When are we doing the next one? And we haven't even thought about any of that, but I think it's probably, there should be another one sometime in the future.
I was just thinking, as I mentioned in the beginning, being the newbie, one of the newer people on B.A.S.I.C, I really feel like it's helped me do my job better, just being a part of B.A.S.I.C, because it's informed me more about just immigrant knowledge, immigrant stories, and the access to partners. So that's been a terrific thing for me, just that real connection to a larger community, and where does LitNet kind of fit into the services piece. And certainly during COVID, one thing that became obvious to all of us is that the most important things were the fuel, the food, the medical care. Sure, learning English is an amazing opportunity to move lives forward, and what LitNet does is important, but those basic needs just came first. And it was just wonderful to see the B.A.S.I.C community talk about that and say, hey, can you get your learners there? I use the word learners because that's what we call our students at LitNet, but all of the clients, the community together, and get them to know about this, get them to know they have fuel assistance, about this tax rebate, about what their rights are. The COVID education. Vim, you guys have just done an amazing job to get the word out about vaccines, and getting Spanish speakers in there to help facilitate, and it's just such good work.
It might be worth mentioning the other organizations that are involved with us.
Great idea.
So I'm sure we're going to miss some, which will be terrible, but
Let's see if we can do this.
Why don't we brainstorm together? Obviously, Berkshire Immigrant Center. Why don't we go? Each of us think of one. Doug?
Multicultural Bridge.
I'm sorry, again?
Multicultural Bridge comes, B.A.S.I.C.
Which is the Berkshire Community Action Council.
CHP.
CHP, the WIC program out of CHP. We have BCC, Greylock, Federal Credit Union comes, Elizabeth Freeman Center. We have
18 degrees.
18 degrees. We have people from the school, the superintendent roundtable that comes. We have some, Hevra, the rabbis from Hevra, John Nelson. We have some people who come over sometimes from Connecticut and different faith leaders from there. We have
IO, which stands
IO. Thank you. Your Berkshire Interfaith Organizers. We have some community members who come. Latinas 413. Different people come in for different reasons. Our delegates have been there. But that's about, if we forgot you, we are sorry.
Yes, we just had Mahawi join, the development director.
Yeah, which has been great to kind of start to intersect, the social service world of the Berkshires with the arts world. And what does it mean to really create access and to make this a place where the immigrants feel welcomed, whether they walk into the Mahawi or Jacob's Pillow or Tanglewood, and what does that look like?
Lee, you would ask examples of kind of successes of B.A.S.I.C. So let me give you two quick stories, and it just so happens, and maybe it's not a coincidence, that it involves the organizations that are with us today. One of Becky's colleagues at B.C.C, Anna Suffish, who participates in the group, called me a while ago. There was a B.C.C student who was a subtenant, where the tenant was having an issue with the landlord, and was the subtenant going to have to leave. And Anna got me involved, and with a very modest effort, we were able to ensure that that subtenant was able to stay in the person's home. That's great. Alana and her colleague Natalia DeRuzio, a month or so ago, called my attention to a situation involving several of their patients who live in a horrible place in Great Barrington, and the matter was before the Board of Health. So, I sit in on the Board of Health meeting, but I do that. That's what a lawyer would do. But what moved me was there's Alana on a weekday night, spending an hour of her time sitting in on the Board of Health meeting, because these are her patients. These are Vim's patients. And that's a situation that we're involved in and trying to help out. You hear healthcare organizations talk about social determinants of health, but Alana and Vim boil that down to the nitty gritty. And, if you lose your housing, it's bad for your health. And there they were, Alana and Natalia, on the front end of that, helping their patients. And because we all have come to know what each other does for a living, we're able to make that connection quickly, not a lot of bureaucracy. It's a phone call or an email. And there we were. And I like that story because we were able to show those folks, you're not in it alone, right? There's a community of support for the immigrant community, and that's what we should be.
So at our two basic meetings ago, I was joined a subgroup, a small group of people, and we're looking at this financial education piece, because it's something that we've all identified, that the people that we know, the people we service, our clients, our learners, that this is a piece of a puzzle that they could benefit from. So the team and I just had our second meeting today, and I look forward to sharing with the basic group next week. But we have ideas on behalf of B.A.S.I.C of some financial literacy, retirement, how to buy a home, how to build credit, taxes, all of these things that are difficult enough, even if you're born in this country, to figure out, never mind having a second language and, worrying about your status. So it just something that's coming soon through B.A.S.I.C. And I just wondered what other hopes you guys see for B.A.S.I.C's future? Like, what are some next steps or some next hopes of what we can do as a group to support the immigrant community?
I just want to mention, I don't know who listens to this show, but our immigrant community includes both documented and undocumented members, which means some of them are here legally and some of them are not here legally. And the issues that confront those who are not documented are much more difficult than if someone is documented. And so one of the things we also do, there are lots of services in the community. My role used to be to go to meetings and say, are these services available if you are not documented? Mm-hmm. And are there interpretations available for people who don't speak English? So those two questions, which often are not raised when social services get together, we all make sure that we bring those two questions to every meeting that we go to, so that we are sure that we do all we can to address people who don't speak English and people who are not documented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think the future of B.A.S.I.C, we've talked about this as a group. Do we need to be, our own group? And the bottom line is we really like how it functions. We are an impact. We have a large impact. We're effective. We like working together. The group continues to grow and people consistently come. So that shows there's a lot of engagement. Our goal is for the Berkshires to be a place where all immigrants are really thriving. And so, that will continue to be the mission of B.A.S.I.C. We know that the immigrant community is the only growing community in Berkshire County. We know that being an immigrant wherever you live comes with its challenges. And we know that the Berkshires is a really, really hard place to live as an immigrant. There are some amazing parts to living in the Berkshires. It's beautiful, it's safe. People really, there are a lot of benefits, but we still know, you call up, most agencies in the Berkshires, you're going to get English speakers. Whether it's the school district, whether it's the hospital, our county is not set up for this growing population. So we are going to continue not to make it so that the immigrants fit into what we have that already exists, but how do we adjust? How do we help the Berkshires become a place that is a place where immigrants thrive, not the other way around?
I think part of it is it would be understandable and easy to assume that because Berkshire County is a series of small towns, that there might not be resources available to address whatever the particular needs are of members of the immigrant community. And the fact is, there are a lot more resources than people might think, and B.A.S.I.C's a good group of people to get that word around. And because we know each other and work together, we can make that happen for a lot of people.
And just a note to everyone out there, the one area that everybody is stymied in is transportation. So if anybody has a solution, and it's for many low-income groups, undocumented immigrants aren't supposed to drive, which means they would need public transportation to get around, and we don't have a good public transportation system. So we don't have any solutions yet, but that's one of the huge challenges for our community.
And housing.
And housing, yes, thanks.
Yeah, which is even
affordable
now than before, even worse now lately.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you. This is just a short conversation today, but I appreciate all of you. I appreciated you before today, and I appreciate you right now. And I look forward to our meeting next Tuesday. And I'm so glad that we could share this corner of the world that not everybody is aware of, that there are these partnerships going on to support people in our community, immigrants in our community. So thank you all for being here today, Becky and Doug.
If you said you were going to do an intro, you might add some way that people can contact us if they want to join the group or they want to know about some of the resources.
Absolutely.